Catherine from Jayne, Catherine on Books, and welcome to my channel. To all new subscribers, welcome, and those that have been with me quite a long way, then thanks for keep coming back. And I've been looking through my bookshelves recently, having a bit of a clear out, doing some sorting, got a couple of new bookshelves, and realised just how many books I've got covering either the Great War or Second World War. I mean, more covering the Second World War. There's one or two, I think, in here of the Great War. And I thought it'd be a good idea to give you some bookish recommendations. I know many people do enjoy reading World War II fiction, and I know especially Krista from Books and Jams, she's a big lover of World War II fiction, I believe, so go and check out her channel. Make sure you'll come across a few other recommendations over there. So I'll just give you a bit of a brief overview on the books that are on my shelf. So, and I've got some notes here as well, just so I don't remember all the little tidbits that I'm going to give you about them all. Now, so the first book is Deafening. It's because of the light, it's hard to get it in the right spot, as it were. This is by Frances Itani, and this won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize. This came out in 2003, and this is in World War One, so in the Great War. And we've got, I'm trying to think, Grania, that's quite an unusual name, Grania. She got scarlet fever as a young girl, aged 5, which unfortunately the side effect was that she lost her hearing. And I think this is all about a difficulty with coming to terms with being deaf and communicating with people. And then as she grew up, she falls for somebody called Jim, who is very patient, very understanding of her condition. I think they find their own unique way of communicating, and unfortunately he has to go off to the Great War, and I'm not quite sure what happens there. I hope it's not going to be a sad one. I've not read this yet, but it just says peace and war, love and loss, hope and despair. Deafening is a stunning epic novel of stark contrasts and a moving testament to the power of language. So yeah, that sounds a really nice one. So that's Deafening. Next, this is a hard one to hold up because it's one of those great big, the bigger paperback size, from Sand and Ashes. Oh, Sand and Ash, sorry, not Sand and Ashes. And this is by Amy Harman. And this is Second World War One. It came out in 2016, and I don't know, I've not read this yet. You know, there's just so many books and so little time, as we all seem to say. But we've got two main characters here who come from different sides of the religious sector. They were brought up in sort of like girl boy next door, and he is Angelo, and he is Catholic, comes from a Catholic family, and Eva comes from a Jewish family. And then unfortunately we have the Great War that breaks out, and that causes problems because they're both from different denominations. So we've got Angelo. He goes off and he becomes a Catholic priest, makes a decision to go into the priesthood, and of course their relationship ends and they split up. And I think they meet up again at some stage, and I'm not sure what happens from there on in, and it's going to be a bit difficult because he's a priest, and you know, priests are, what's the word that they, oh, I can't think of the word when they're not allowed to have sex.
Celibate.
Celibate. Yes, thank you. It's way down. Celibate. Background. It's a good job I've got my dictionary there, but it just sorry, David. Yes, celibate. Celibate? Celibate. No, celibate. Sounds like a fish. Sorry. Oh, I'm going to have a fit of giggles now. That's halibut, isn't it? Not halibut. Anyway, yeah, I digress. Sorry, it's just... He's thinking, oh, I'm going to edit all this out. But you're not. So it'd be interesting to see how they manage to solve their differences. Next is The Promise by Susan Sallis. I didn't realise till I was looking this up on Goodreads just how many books Susan Sallis has written. There's about 55 on Goodreads. And this came out in 2017, so only last year. I've not read it yet. And this is World War II. And it's into a split time narrative. So we've got a family who were involved in the bombing of Coventry in the Second World War, and they spend obviously a lot of their time in the Anderson shelters because Coventry was very heavily bombed in the Second World War. And then we fast forward 70 years, and for some reason one of the family from Coventry makes a promise to her brother who's lost in the Great War. Don't know what it's about, the promise, but as we fast forward into present day, then that's going to come to light and it starts to be investigated. So yeah, really looking forward to that one. Then next, my very favourite of World War fiction is Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. This is the one of the vintage Future Classics editions, which is lovely, and read this a long time. In fact, I've reread this several times, and it's just a lovely, heartwarming book. Gives you all the feels, as they say. So this came out in 1993, so yeah, originally I read it when it first came out. And we're featuring Stephen, who fights in Amiens in France in the First World War, and there's a lot about his journey, what he sees there, how it shapes him as a person, his experiences of war, the traumas. Also, there's a love story theme that runs throughout this as well, and it's just an amazing book. You know, I can see why now it's a vintage classic, because it's just so beautifully written. I mean, Sebastian Faulks is a very well-known author and written many pieces of work since, but this is still my favourite of his, I have to say, and I think everybody should read it. Makes us feel grateful, you know, for what we have and what people went through to give us peace in our lifetime. Next, who have we got? We've got Rose Under Fire. This came out in 2013, and this is book 2 in the duology Code Name Verity. Now, I did read Code Name Verity when it first came out, and I struggled a little bit with it. I think I gave it 3 stars, and I did struggle. It features the girls that in ATS, oh, I'm sure it's ATA, not ATS, ATA, and they are the girls, the pilots from the Second World War. They weren't allowed into combat, these pilots, but what they did was they taxied the planes for the men. They took the planes, flew them from A to B to C for the different bases, and yes, it was a good book, but it was very slow to start with, and you know, really it's you think that you're going to DNF it because it's just so slow. However, I feel that this is going to hold more promise. I'm more excited about this book too, Rose Under Fire. This is still featuring somebody from the ATA, and we are following Rose, and she's in the process of delivering a plane to one of the RAF bases in Britain, and she is shot down, I believe, or she might have engine trouble and she crashes, but she crash lands and she is taken capture by the Nazis and sent to Ravensbrück, and the awful concentration camp of Ravensbrück, where all the medical experiments took place. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy read. I think it's going to be an important read. I really enjoyed Lilac Girls, which also features somebody that was imprisoned in Ravensbrück, and a very tearful journey through that, but I'd be interested to see what Elizabeth Wein makes of the second book in the series. And quite a few people in their reviews say they do feel that this is a better read than book 1, Codename Verity. So we've got that one there. Next, Letters to the Lost, and again a World War II fiction. This came out in 2015. This is written by Iona Gray, and we've got two main characters that meet in London in the middle of the Blitz in 1943, Stella and Dan, and a chance meeting, and they've just got this chemistry between the two of them, and it's quite a difficult situation because Stella is already married, and so they part never to see again. 70 years later, Dan really wants to find where Stella is, and he's looking for her, and he's following a trail of some letters, I believe, and there's a young girl that comes across these letters. By young girl, I think she's a young adult, and she's so taken with how sweet these letters are, that she thinks that she's going to help him and get on the trail, hot on the trail, shall we say, to see if she can locate Stella as well. So that's all I know about that one. It's been recommended by Lucinda Riley and Rosamund Pilcher, so I mean, what more can you want? Two of my favourite authors there have recommended it. So an epic story of love and loss that will break your heart. So they're not always easy reads. There's some heartwarming stuff in a lot of the World War fiction, but they're not easy reads by any means because of the subject matter. Right, next we've got The Spring of Kasper Meier, or Meier, however that's pronounced. This is by Ben Ferguson, and this takes place in Berlin in 1946, and it's post-war, and this came out in 2014. And Casper, the character Casper, is a bit of a lad, I think. He is known to deal with black market goods, and he's known that he can help find anything that you want on the black market, and makes quite a nice little income for himself through this. Throughout the war he has, and by reputation, because of his reputation, Eva decides she's going to go and ask if he can locate a British pilot that's missing. I'm not sure if this is her lover, husband, relative or whatever, and it's all about how he goes about this. From what I can gather, it's very much an atmospheric novel about post-war Berlin, what it's like, what the atmosphere is like with all the the bombed buildings, and should be a good read, should be an interesting read. Everything is in short supply, including the truth. So that's one that I recommend if you haven't seen it yet. Let's have a look now. So I thought we couldn't do a bookshelf haul recommendation tour without a couple of YA thrown in. So we have The Burning Summer by Lydia Syson, and this is, when did this come out? This came out in 2013, and lovely covers, these ones. And Peggy goes and rescues a German pilot. He crashes into a field near where she lives, and she goes and helps him and hides him. But her brother finds out, Ernest, who's 11, and I think he finds this difficult to come to terms with, that, you know, they're being with all the propaganda and everything that's happening, that, you know, obviously the Germans were the enemy, but they got people fighting, youngsters fighting the same as our young lads. You know, most of the people didn't want to be in the war either. So, you know, they weren't all like involved with Hitler and the Nazis. They were forced, like our lads were. And this is just one of the young lads that, you know, that crash landed, and she was helping. Now, I'm not sure whether, you know, some of it's about the conscience and how this young lad comes to terms with it, or if it doesn't come to terms with it and he dobs him in, as they say. He goes and reports him. I don't know. I've not read this one. So that should be an interesting read. I like Lydia Syson as an author. Now, next we have, and I have read this, A World Between Us. Another lovely cover. And this, although it's not in the Great War or the Second World War, this is in the Spanish Civil War. And I thought, well, I cannot recommend the other one by Lydia Syson without including this, really. It's a YA. It is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Did this come out first? No. Yes, it did. Yes, it came out in 2012. So the other one, The Burning Summer, came out in 2013, which is your World War II, but A World Between Us. And we've got a young nurse, Alex, that goes out to Spain to help with the cause for the Spanish Civil War and help with the injured. And there she gets involved with 2 young men, I believe. So we've got a bit of a love triangle there. And I know, you know, it can be a bit tropic, and the love triangle scenario, and a lot of people don't like love triangles. But this was well done. You know, I really enjoyed this book. It was well worth the read. Right, a couple of middle grades. First of all, we've got The Machine Gunners. I don't know if you can see that, it's a bit shiny. By Robert Westall. Westall, yes. And we've got Chas McGill, who's got the second best collection of war souvenirs in Garmouth, and he desperately wants it to be the best. So when he stumbles across the remains of a German bomber crashed in the woods, its shiny black machine gun is still intact. He grabs his chance. Ooh, that's a bit risky. So we are in the middle of the war. They're in the middle of the bombings. You know, at the height of the bombings, these young kids are going around collecting bits of shrapnel and bits of war treasure, as they call it. But this sounds as if this is going to be a bit of a dangerous one. You know, it's not quite going and finding a bit of metal and taking it home and putting it in a box, is it? I've not read this one yet. This came out in 1995. I think this must have been a reissue cover, because it doesn't look like the sort of cover you'd have in 1995. No, 2015. So Macmillan Children's Books, they were reissued. It was reissued in 2015. First published in 1975, reissued 2015. So we have that one. A bit more for older middle grade, perhaps. And then this is quite a famous book, and I have had it on my shelves a while and not read it, and I'm going to try and get to it next week for the end of middle grade May. So When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. This is written by Judith Kerr. This is a essential modern classics version, and this is a true story. This is the memoir type life story of Judith Kerr, and she was born in Germany and had to flee, like many others did, because her father was a wanted man. The Nazis had got her father on on their list of people they wanted, and off they were, rushed away by a mother and father. And it's very difficult, I should think, as a young girl to make sense of why you've got to leave your homeland and go somewhere else. And yeah, this happened to somebody in my own family, going back on my mum's side, my nanan. And because that happened to her, she had to flee. She ended up in the UK and married. I don't know if it was my nanan's brother or a cousin or somebody. I can't remember in the family tree now. But yeah, she got a very similar story, and yeah, pleased that she ended up marrying somebody. They were a wonderful family. All my nanan's sisters and brothers, and even though we're going back a long time ago, yeah, so I'm interested to read this. Many people that read it, it has a lasting memory for them. It's on their book of all-time favourites. So yeah, I don't know why I've not got to it before now. I think it's up there with Anne Frank's diary, really, in how people revere it. So that's my final one, When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. I hope you've enjoyed that selection of war books from my bookshelf, and let me know if you read any of them or any that you want to recommend to me. Let's have a bit of a chat down below. Don't forget to subscribe. All the smaller booktubers are working really hard to try and get up to that 1,000 subscriber mark, just because YouTube has altered the ruling there. So it's been lovely to have you all visiting my channel, and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.